Dear Director General of ISESCO, Dr. Al-Malik, dear Mr. El-Yazidi, dear Dr. Hibawi, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to this international conference, which deals with the important topic of perceptions and attributions. And I thank especially also Dr. Al-Malik for your kind words on German contribution to understanding the Islamic world and to finding ways of living together between religions, cultures, and civilizations. And also, I thank the organizers for inviting me, inviting Germany and its contribution here for your series. We are very, very, very humbled. As a German ambassador to Morocco, I consider myself particularly fortunate that Dr. Hibawi is presenting his excellent monography of the history of German Oriental studies to this learned audience today. Dr. Hibawi's valuable contribution opens up to us the still under-researched perspective of the Arab-speaking world on German and European Oriental studies and their approaches, and thus contributes to deepening of the exchange and understanding between our peoples. His perspective is also particularly interesting because academics from the region, which has been the object of Oriental studies for many centuries, are now turning in turn and examining the work of their former researchers who made assumptions and declarations about them. As Dr. Hibawi beautifully traces in his comprehensive study, the study of the so-called Orient, and I shall come back to that terminology later, it has a long tradition in German-speaking countries. Oriental studies as a scientific discipline emerged as early as the beginning of the 14th century. Until the mid-18th century, Orientalists, however, were primarily experts such as biblical scholars, specialists on Islam, or even linguists. Many consider the philosopher and poet Johann Gottfried Herder to be among the most important representatives of German Oriental studies. In his work, Herder dealt in detail with Islam and the diversity of Oriental cultures, and I make the point, diversity of Oriental cultures. Based on his experience, he throughout his life advocated the ideal of a society characterized by humanity, tolerance, and the right to individual religious practice. And I think we can learn from him until today. Herder shaped a decidedly intercultural approach of German Oriental studies. This also found an echo in world literature. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe has already been mentioned. He, for example, spoke out in favor of interreligious tolerance and dialogue with his extensive collection of poems, the Westöstliche Divan, which was inspired by the Persian poet Hafiz. Marked by a profound respect and an admiration, but also scientific approach and wanting to know, these are the sort of aspirations and characteristics of this German approach to research on the Oriental world. Ladies and gentlemen, German Orientalists have made a significant contribution to the scholarly study of the so-called Orient. With their manifold approaches, they have contributed to a better understanding of languages, cultures, and peoples of the region. In the 19th century, interest in the Orient began to grow immensely and took on the characteristics of a fashion, however. Adventurers, artists, and aristocrats, women as well as men, set off for the Orient, often inspired by a romantic image and in search of exotism. For many, it was also an attempt to escape from the repressive social and political atmosphere at home. At this point, at the latest, we must also be aware that the term Orient is not an innocent concept. At first glance, it refers to a geographical or cultural region of the world. However, if we look more closely, it becomes clear that it is the science of the Orient, or rather Orientalism, often embodied by a very specific point of view and was characterized by sometimes negative stereotypes. Often enough, the concept of the Orient served as a contrast and demarcation to the, in a way, equally problematic concept of the Occident. This reflects a perception of the world that was already drawn in antiquity between Europe, then Greece or Rome, and the peoples of the East, which were then the Persians. This very idea of foreign and the other was later transferred to mainly the Arab-speaking Islamic world and further solidified. These stereotypes are still present today, if we like them or not. Even if these are not always negative, they unfortunately often serve the consolidation of supposed characteristics, which supposedly cannot be escaped or altered. In reality, however, it is obvious that a conceptual division of the world is obsolete today. Migration and immigration have enriched and changed our communities. Germany today is an ethnically, religiously, and culturally diverse society that seeks to enable participation for all people, regardless of their origin, gender, religion, age, disability, or identity. And this is our constitution, our Verfassung, which guarantees this to all of the members of society. So Berlin today is home to people practicing more than 50 different religions or religious beliefs. The focus now must be on the coexistence of different cultures and religions, as well on dealing with cultural differences through dialogue. In my view, it is clear that the path to a society which is able to successfully integrate this diversity cannot be domination by some and subordination of others. Instead, it is essential to recognize that cultures learn from and with each other. Also, and I come back to the title of today's conference, cultures are not static concepts, but capable of developing, growing together, and reaching new horizons, and we have seen this in the history of mankind. With this in mind, allow me to end with a quote from Goethe's West Eastern Divan, very much quoted in Germany, which stated with great wisdom over 200 years ago, and I start with the German version because it has the rhythm of the language in it. Wer sich selbst kennt und andere kennt, wird auch hier erkennen, Orient und Occident sind nicht mehr zu trennen. In English, he who knows himself and others will also recognize here Orient and Occident can no longer be separated. Now we confront this with the quote from that used by Ambassador Fatal in the beginning, East and West shall not meet. Was it ever true? It was never true. And I think the time has definitely revolved around that. So I wish us all a fruitful exchange, and thank you very much for listening to me.